Hello, let's take a look at Waymaker's new probability sequencer introduced in version 1.0.4. To start, I'm just going to define a simple melody. I don't really know what this is going to sound like, but we'll program it in and go from there. Let's try that. I'm going to set this to progress at eighth notes. Okay, so that is perfectly serviceable, but let's add some probability to it. So I'm going to put a probability module after this step sequencer. Now, you're probably already familiar with the probability module. It gives you a chance that a note is going to pass through or not. It's a very easy way to introduce a little bit of variation into a sequence. But previously it was completely random variation. But now the probability module is going to let you create a sequence of probabilities. You can see here now there is a number of steps for this control and a speed. So let's add a few more steps here. And let's define some speed. I'm going to say that this progresses at quarter notes. So it's progressing just a little bit slower than our sequencer that's moving at eighth notes. So right now this isn't going to do anything, but you can kind of see how it steps through. Now we can start to think about, maybe there are parts of this melody which we would like to happen less frequently. Maybe these, this third and fourth note could happen less frequently. And maybe the last two notes could be a little bit less frequent as well. So I'm going to say that we have a little bit less probability on the second stage, and just a little bit less on the last stage. Now keep in mind the relationship between this probability module and the step sequencer feeding it. This one is running at eighth notes, and this one is running at quarter notes. So it's half as slow. And that means that there's going to be 2 notes per stage. So that's what I mean when I say, maybe these 2 stages could happen less often. Those correspond to this stage in the probability module. Let's just hear what happens. And you might have noticed, when we're on a stage, that is the probability that any of the notes passing through are going to occur. Each note that occurs during that stage has an independent probability. So on this stage where there's 50%, there was 2 notes occurring, and each one had a 50% chance, which means that one of them might happen, neither of them might happen, both of them might happen. But I just want to point out that it's not an all or nothing kind of control. It just lets you control what is the chance of notes happening on that stage. So I think this is interesting because it kind of lets us think about melodies in terms of, I like to think of them in terms of heads and tails. Like, let's say these first few notes in the melody is the head of the melody. And a lot of times that can be kind of the more recognizable part of a melody. And the last few notes are what we can call the tail of the melody. And a lot of times that is what has a lot of variation if you're, playing an instrument, you might make sure to always play the head of the melody, but then the tail can kind of have some variation. So let's try that here. I've slowed the probability module down to every half note, which means that now there's 4 notes occurring for every stage in the probability module. So let's say our head is always going to happen, but the tail is a little bit less chance. And if you really want to dial this in to essentially be a probability per stage, the probability sequencer will go up to 8 steps total. So we can really dial in a probability for each individual stage in the sequence. At least in this case, where it's a relatively short sequence, but I think it's pretty common for melodies to only be around 8 stages. Oops. To make this work, you need to sync this up to the previous sequencer, so we could set it to 8th notes, or we could actually just advance it on MIDI notes. So with these two things combined, we've kind of got a new way to introduce probability per stage, which is something that's a little bit more dynamic than turning stages on or off. You could even have them basically always off, with just a low chance of occurring. And then if and when this note ever occurs, it just adds a little bit of unexpected variation to your melody. So, that is Waymaker's new probability sequencer. It's still pretty straightforward to use, but I hope it will help you add a bit more dynamics and kind of controlled randomness to your sequences. And that has been added in Waymaker's version 1.0.4.